Hi, my name is Richard Curtis, I work for Adobe and I look after digital imaging here in the UK. Today we're going to go through Lightroom 5 and Photoshop for Creative Cloud. We're going to look at all the new features inside the two applications and also the workflows between the two. Now, I'm a photographer as well, so I kind of understand the pain that people do suffer between the two. And the most common question I get asked when I'm out on the road is, how do you work with Lightroom and Photoshop as a combined unit? And we're going to go through that today. We're also going to look at the extra features you get with the Photographer's Bundle, but also with the Creative Cloud. So we're going to look at Behance, and we're also going to look at Prosite, and also how to get your content into the Creative Cloud. So let's get on and look into Lightroom 5. Before we get into Lightroom 5 new features, I just want to go down memory lane very quickly and look at some features in Lightroom 4, which made a huge difference to photographers. You can see this picture here is of the Eiffel Tower, and it's a little bit flat. But if we look at the histogram on the right hand side, we know that there's lots of tones in that picture. So we can turn on the J key, and the J key will show us any highlight and shadow areas that are clipping in the picture. So to do that, we need to go to the development module. And then once we're there, we can then click on the J key. You can see there that we only have a little bit of shadow area clipping and no highlights. And that's reflected in the histogram over here in the right hand side. And you can see there that we're kind of blocked up in the highlights and in the shadows, and there's no midtones. That's why the picture looks very, very dull. So let's fix that. Before we fix that though, I want to look at where the algorithms and all the maths are inside Lightroom. So just so you know how to get to old versions if you need to get that for creative effect. Under the settings menu, you have this process version. And you can see there that we're on process version 2012. Now, let's just go back in time to Lightroom 3 and turn on process version 2010. You can see when I turn on the process version for 2010, I get a lot more clipping in the highlights and shadows. That's because Lightroom is inherently in Lightroom 5 doing much more work to recover that information automatically for you. In Lightroom 3, we had these two sliders called Recovery and Fill Light. And these two sliders are used to pull out your highlights and your shadows, but they work on the whole picture. And sometimes when you're working with just highlight and shadow values, you need to work on them independently. And this feature didn't really allow you to do that. So just go back to the settings and turn the process version 2012 on, and you see that difference straight away. You also see that you now have the highlights and shadow sliders that are going to work on just those areas of the picture. So you've got a lot more control from a photographic point of view. To pull the highlights back, we can just move to the left, and you can see there that I've pulled all that highlight information back into the sky. I'm just going to turn off the shadow clipping with the J key, and I'm going to use the Alt key and then move the shadow value to the right. This will extract all the shadow information, and you can see there that I'm no longer clipping that data. If I take my finger off the Alt key, you'll see that I can continue pulling information out of the shadows, and you can see that reflected also in the histogram. We now have some midtones, and we now have extracted shadow and highlight information. So you can see with just those two sliders we've made a massive difference to the picture. We can also see that by using a comparison. So if we turn on the original version and the new version, we can see that the old version was very flat, but the new version's got a lot more tone inside it. Now, the final thing we changed was the clarity slider. This could create some haloing around the midtones. So if we just push this up now, you will see we get a nice midtone contrast around the edges, but it doesn't matter how far I push that up. I can push it to 100%. I won't get any haloing around the edges. I can zoom in there and you can see there's no haloing at all. So I get a really nice effect. Now, this isn't sharpening, it's just adding midtone contrast, so you will need to do that later on in your development cycle. The first thing to notice in Lightroom 5 is that I have question marks in my left-hand folder panel. Now, if you're used to a Lightroom way of working, you know that the question marks is a really bad sign. It just means that the pictures that I'm trying to work on don't exist. And in previous versions of Lightroom, you weren't able to take those pictures into the development module because it didn't exist. In Lightroom 5, we've solved that. So in Lightroom 5, you now have something called a smart preview, and the smart previews can be built once you've imported them or can be built on import. And they're really designed to be very, very lightweight, so they're actually lightweight DNG files. We take the original RAW file and we compress it heavily to be a lightweight DNG file. So for example, we can take a 70 meg RAW file and convert it to be about 1.2. That means that it's extremely light. Now, its sole purpose really is to work offline. So if, for example, you're a travel photographer, you're able to work now offline without having to have your hard drive attached. So here's my little hard drive over here. That's really advantageous because travel photographers tend to work on really funny scenarios, like they might work on a plane or a train, or they might work on a car or a bus, or they might work in a coffee shop. And the last thing you really want to do is carry this hard drive around with you because it's a kind of a bit of a clumsy item. And if you're working on an aeroplane, for example, you might be on the aisle seat with your hard drive hanging off on the right on the side, and the air hostess comes through the aisle and hits the hard drive with a trolley. But that's not going to be good for your hard drive. The best outcome of that is going to be a crashed disk. That's really not what you want to do. So having that smart preview option available when you are traveling or even when you're out on the road is a really nice way to start working on your pictures. And we'll cover that a little bit later on about how to do that. But first of all, I want to cover the new advanced healing brush inside Lightroom 5. So let's just switch on over to the development module and look at this feature. The clone heal tool inside versions of Lightroom has always been around disk, and that's okay for very small fixes. So for example, if I want to fix this little bit of bracken over here, I can do that very quickly just by making my clone heal tool a similar size to the area that I want to fix, and then click using my tablet on the picture and then find a new source for that destination. That will just do quite nicely. I can then work on the opacity and I can work on the size. Now you'll notice, and the reason why people would then turn to Photoshop for any patching like this is that the disk is still fairly visible. So we didn't have a feather on the clone heal tool up until Lightroom 5. Now in Lightroom 5.2, you have the feather tool available. So if I scoot over here very quickly, I can then move the feather and feather this selection. And this now fits right in to the area that I'm trying to fix. So a much faster way of working. Don't forget, it's non-destructive by default, which means I'm not going to damage any pixels. But how about we want to try and get rid of this person in the scene as well? It may be that she doesn't want to be there as part of this picture, but she may want to be there as part of another picture. So I want to repurpose this picture. Now, if I want to get rid of that the old way, I'd have to go and increase the size of my clone heal tool to something rather big. And that's kind of a bit redundant because you're taking up so much more space. Ideally, I want to be able to mark the mask or create a new mask based upon the shape that I want to remove. So I'm just going to change the size of this manually. And I get to a point which I like. Once I've found my brush size that I like and it's going to fit the purpose, so it's not too big and not too small, I can then just hold the brush down and paint over the area that I'd like to remove. This will create me a mask which is exactly the same shape as the area I want to remove. I can then push the / key and Lightroom will go and find a new area to clone and sample from, or I can do it manually. In addition, in Lightroom 5, we've also got right click on these pins as well. So you can change this from being cloned to heal, you can select a new source, you can delete this pin, or you can reset all the pins on this picture. It's up to you. So you've got a bit more control of your pins of your picture. So that's a really great way. And also don't forget, you have feathering on here as well. So I can feather this into the picture so the viewer won't know that you've actually got rid of something out of the scene. The advanced healing tool and the feather capability on the clone heal stamp tool is a great improvement for you to work on your pictures and get them looking even more amazing. Okay, so sometimes we take a picture like this. The horizontal is out, the horizon is out, and sometimes we get that in photography. And the verticals are also out as well. And if you're anything like me, you actually want to have all your verticals and horizontals square. And it's a little bit finicky, but that's how us photographers like to be. So you could bring that into Photoshop and you can correct that using something like the adaptive wide angle tool. but it's a kind of little bit frustrating to do that, and it slows down the workflow. That's not to say that the adaptive wide angle isn't any good, because it's amazing, but I just want speed as part of this process. So I'm just going to scoot over to my development mode, and I'm going to go over to my lens correction tab. Inside my lens correction tab, I have the basic panel open here. Now you can see that I have something called enable profile corrections. What this will do is it will take the metadata from the camera. Now we work with lens manufacturers and camera manufacturers to make sure that we can get rid of any natural vignetting or distortion that the lens may provide. So by turning this on, you will get rid of any vignetting or any distortion in the lens. So let's do that now. And you can see that it made quite a bit of difference. Now the upright technology we're going to look at isn't dependent upon this being set, but if you are working with glass like Canon glass, Nikon glass, Hasselblad glass or Leica glass, then it's definitely worthwhile turning that switch on. And you can turn it on import as well, so it's automatic as part of that process. The upright command has got multiple modes. It's got the level, the vertical, the auto and the full. So let's look at them one by one. The level will just level the picture and work out the horizontal. The vertical will look at the vertical lines and the horizontal lines and just square them off. I'm just going to reset that image now by using the Shift Command R key to reset that and use Auto. Auto will look at the horizontal, the vertical and any distortion and try and fix that for you so you get a nice result. Now if we have something more aggressive like this picture where you've got the horizons out and the verticals are out, it's a bit more challenging to do that just with auto, so you may need to do something a little bit more aggressive. So for that, the full is something I can use, and the full is going to perform a full 3D warp. Now it's going to start moving pixels around, so be careful with this tool because it is going to be quite aggressive. But if I do that, it gets me to a point where things start moving around much quicker. Now you can see there I didn't turn enable profile corrections on, so I can do that post as well and turn that on. Now I just need to go in there and scoot over to manual and just change the vertical a little bit to get that exactly where I need it to be. So you can see there it's done a very good job at fixing that picture for me, fixing the horizon, the verticals and any barrel distortion that I have in the picture. So it gets me out of trouble just in case I've got myself into it. There's a brand new filter inside Lightroom 5 and that's the Radial filter. Now let's look at this picture for a second and just analyze it very quickly. Your eye tends to go onto this area over here and it misses the message of the cowboys. The whole story is about the cowboys going across the plain, but with my eyes and the brightness levels, it's just going to go over here. So I want to bring the viewer back to the cowboys. Now in Lightroom 4, the only option we really had was the post-crop vignette. Let's just go do that now. So we just apply a post-crop vignette and it's okay, but the problem is that it comes from the center outwards and it just darkens the edges, so it's not really going to force the viewer in. In fact, I'm still dragged into this area over here because it's still too bright. I could crop it, but the problem with cropping is that even when I get down to something like this, I've lost the story. I've lost the whole point of why these cowboys are walking across the plains. So that's not really going to work. So let's just reset this picture back to start using Shift Command R. And I'm just going to bring in the new tool called the Radial filter. The Radial filter has all the attributes that the other filters have as well. So I can alter the temperature and the tint, I can alter the exposure, the contrast, highlights, the clarity, whatever I want on that area of the Radial filter. Let's just draw a Radial filter in and start using this tool very quickly to focus our eyes on the cowboys. So I just draw the ellipse and move it into its place. I can then alter the exposure and dial that down, and you see the rest of the scene is starting to dial down apart from the cowboys, which focuses my eyes on the cowboys themselves. Now I can also alter the feathering of this tool, so it's softer or harder. I can also invert the mask as well. In that case, that will darken just the cowboys and brighten everything else. I'll keep everything else at the same level. So that's a really great tool, and don't forget you can do multiple Radial filters if you need them as well, so you can actually highlight different areas of the scene depending on what's going on. Now you notice that we've been working on these pictures in development module, but the actual pictures don't exist inside Lightroom. They exist just as a preview. And we can see that because under the histogram, we can see the smart preview is being turned on. Now, how do you get the smart previews? Well, on the import menu, you now have an option which tells Lightroom to build the smart previews upon import. So it will automatically build them as they're coming in. Now, what I wouldn't suggest is that you do the smart preview import for every single picture that you have in order to make Lightroom faster. It's still going to create a physical unit on my local drive where my catalog is, assuming that's where your catalog is, and it will take up space. So I would only do it for items that you want to work the smart previews on and discard the ones that you have built when you don't want to use them. So let's just turn on this hard drive now and we can see what will happen. As soon as Lightroom recognizes that my drive has been attached, the indicator for the drive will go green, that's the so, and the pictures become available. You can see in the histogram, or just under the histogram, you have now the original and smart preview. And what happens is that Lightroom has now switched the original file behind the scenes and replaced the smart preview. Pretty neat. You can't see it, which is great. So now I get to work on the full picture. But wait, you say, what if I've made changes to the picture and I want those to be replicated back on my hard drive? Now, Lightroom won't do that automatically for you. So what you need to do is press Command S on the keyboard or Control S on a PC, and it will save the metadata to the file, and it will save any changes to that hard drive. Now, if you're using a native file like a CR2 file or an NEF file, you will then save the metadata to a XMP file next door to the physical file. And I'm going to show you a switch in a second that you need to have turned on to do that. Otherwise, the changes will be stored next to the catalog or in the catalog. There is a setting that you need to check that's on the catalog settings. So under the Lightroom menu, catalog settings, and you can see there under the metadata tab, there's the automatically write changes to XMP. This means that any changes in Lightroom will be replicated onto the physical disk next to the native file, or if you're using an Adobe DNG file, will be stored inside the DNG file, which means you've got a backup of any changes that you want. And you can also do that in retrospect as well, just in case you didn't have that turned on when you started editing in Lightroom, so you can do that post as well. That's a really handy switch, and I would say turn that on because that may help you in the future if anything happens to your catalog. Not that it will, but you never know. We've also introduced something in Lightroom which I really like, and that's full screen mode. So let's just take this picture here. To get to full screen mode previously in Lightroom, you'd have to hide the panels using Shift and Tab, and then move Lightroom into lights out mode using the L key, and then you get that nice view of that picture. But it's not really full screen, and sometimes you just want the full glory of full screen. So let's just turn that back to where we were. Now we can just press the F key, and the F key will take us straight into full screen mode. This is great. It still means I can go backwards and forwards with my pictures, and I can still rank at full screen. So I can still press 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for my ranking keys and rank this picture, and it will just advance to the next picture if you have auto advance turned on. Another new feature was in the slideshow, and sometimes it's nice to have a bit of video to complement your images, just to tell a sequence or a story or a narrative. And I use video quite a lot. It's quite nice to have that feature available, but I'd like to have that in my slideshow. Well, in Lightroom 5 you have that such feature. If I just move across to the slideshow tab and then press play, it will build the preview for me and start showing me the images. Once it gets to the video, it will just start playing the video. And you can see there that the video now starts to play. If we let it play, it will go into the cowboy who's riding the horse, and then it will go into showing a scene of him going up into the mountains. So you can see it adds a bit more richness into the story that I'm trying to tell. And there you go. So there's some great new features in Lightroom 5. Let's have a look at some workflow items that have been there for a while now. Now, if I look at these two pictures, they were taken at a very similar time. I've got some nice detail over on this scene, and I've got the nice detail of the bunker on this scene, but I want all of it in a single picture. Now, I took them in a boat, so with a telephoto lens, so I made use of the compression that you get with the telephoto lens. And a great technique is to merge photos together when you've been using telephoto lenses to keep that nice depth of field. So to do that, let's just go back to my panels and turn my Shift tab on, and then right click and then open up or edit in Panorama in Photoshop. This will now create the panoramic image for me and automatically do the stitching and alignment of these images. You can see there it brings up the photo merge dialog with the actual file names, and then it will bring them through and go through its processing to blend them together. That's another example of how I can use Photoshop as an engine for processing my Lightroom pictures. So you can see there it's done a pretty good job, and you can't see the seams. If we go to the layers, you can see what it's blended and what it's kept. So it does a pretty good job. But the problem is that I've got this extra area around the edges that looks a little bit unsightly. Now, the first thing that you could probably do is crop it. You can crop this, and you can then use non-destructive crop to always keep the image and just have the final image. But I don't want to crop it, I want to keep it as it was. So let's just roll that back. Now, the first thing I need to do is to merge these two together. So I'm going to use the content aware fill technology to go and recreate pixels in those empty areas, but use a very small amount of data from this image to go and recreate those pixels. So it gives me a starting point. Now it's going to get me about 80% of the way there, and the 20% is the touching up that I may have to do, because I may cause some repetition of pixels, or there may be some other things that come in there that I don't want. But it's going to get me a little way forward rather than just starting from nothing. So I just go into this little flyout menu, and I'm just going to merge visible, and you can see I merged it into one. So I'm just going to choose the Magic Wand tool, and I'm going to select the empty pixels. And you can see there it's done that quite nicely. I want to make sure that the other areas of the picture that may also have transparent areas are selected as well. So I'm going to choose Select Similar. I then want to extend the selected area by a couple of pixels just to give Content Aware a little bit more information about what it's doing. So Select, Modify, Expand, 2 pixels, and then just use the Content Aware Fill under Edit Fill, make sure I'm in Content Aware mode, and press OK, and it will go and create me new pixels. And there you go, it's done a pretty good job, and it's actually creating those pixels. Now you can see I've got a little bit of repetition over here and a bit over here. That's easy to fix though. I can just pull in a transparent layer, I can just go over here to my healing brush tool, and I can just sample from that brickwork. That's the Alt key to sample. I can sample from the brickwork and just make that scene fit really nicely. So that's how to use panoramic stitching from Lightroom into Photoshop, and then use Content Aware Fill to create any extra pixels that you may be missing due to the way that the images were taken. The next workflow item I want to talk about is smart objects. So we're going to pick up this item here, which is a model which I shot a while ago, and I want to make some adjustments in Lightroom. So let's just go into the development module, and let's just use the clarity to smooth the skin out, and let's use the white and black point, and then I want to edit it in Photoshop. So I go to right click, edit in Photoshop as a smart object. Now typically most users, when it comes down to working with Lightroom and Photoshop, will press Command E on a Mac or Control E on a PC, and that will bring it into Photoshop. What this is doing, however, is it will create me a layer in Photoshop that will hold in there the raw file and the changes. So the smart object's a clever container, and it hasn't done the raw processing yet. The result of what I'm seeing, or the result that I'm seeing here, is actually the adjustments of the metadata against the raw file. So nothing's been committed, which means that I can actually go back to my raw file and my Lightroom changes at any point in time via the Camera Raw engine. So let's make an adjustment to this file. So go into Layer, Adjustment Layer. Let's go to Color Lookup, something that's brought in CS6. And this is bringing 3D looks, and 3D looks are created in SpeedGrade. And I can bring them looks into Photoshop and apply that to my picture to give me a different kind of feel. These are film looks, so it is very different to the way that Photoshop levels and curves are currently working now. So I'm going to go into maybe film stock, and it gives it a nice punchy image. You might want to change the opacity and just dial that down a little bit so it's less aggressive. Now, I suddenly realised I want to go back to my raw file and do some changes. Now I can, because it's a smart object, double click on that smart object and bring it straight back into Camera Raw. Notice that my settings from Lightroom are brought through as well. So my white point and black point have changed, and so are my clarity values. So that's the meta changes that are coming through from Photoshop. I can now go in here and change my exposure if I want to, or maybe the white balance, or my highlights and shadows, and I can bring that through and press OK. Once it's done that, it will then update the smart object and then update the view that I'm seeing in Photoshop and then apply my layer to it. So there's a really nice workflow there to keep your non-destructive editing all the way through your Photoshop sequence using Lightroom as a source. Which brings me actually straight into Photoshop and to show you all the Photoshop new features. Inside Photoshop for Creative Cloud, the same as Photoshop CS6, we have the Camera Raw engine. Camera Raw engine is exactly the same as Lightroom. So I'm not going to go into the details of Camera Raw because it's exactly the same. However, I am going to talk about the Camera Raw as a filter, which is something new in Photoshop and brings in a brand new workflow item inside Photoshop. Sometimes we get JPEGs to work on and TIFF files, and we don't just get RAW files. Now, if you've got a RAW file, you can bring it through to Lightroom or bring it through to Camera Raw, and you can then work on it natively as a RAW process. If you've got a JPEG file, though, you'd have to go into wrap that up as a DNG file, or do some funky changes, so some scripts in Photoshop to get that wrapped up inside a native RAW file so you can open it in Camera Raw. The new Camera Raw filter enables me just to work on any file that I want to, or anything inside Photoshop as a RAW object, including 3D, including video, whatever that may be. So I can pick up my JPEG file, so I'm going to bring this one in here and just drop it to the screen. And you can see there, it's got a few things wrong with it. It's got a white balance problem that I need to fix, and I can do that through Camera Raw. Because if I'm using it in Photoshop, I'll have to go into levels or curves and do it manually by eye. And that's where Lightroom's got the advantage, because it knows how to deal with photographs specifically. So under the filter menu, you have the Camera Raw filter. Now, I could hit this and I would be able to go and change the raw values using Camera Raw, but that's not a very good non-destructive process. Actually, what I really want to do is convert it to a smart object. So I can choose the filter, smart filter, and convert this object to a smart filter. If I zoom in, you can see it looks exactly the same as it did previously when I brought it in through Lightroom as a smart object. If I go back into filter now and go to Camera Raw as a filter, it will just now bring up the Camera Raw engine and allow me all my functionality of Camera Raw that I can work on with this picture. So the first thing I want to do is go work on my white balance and say auto and press OK. That will update the image with the Camera Raw filter. You can see now that in the layers palette you have a mask. You also have the Camera Raw filter, which means at any point in time I can double click on my Camera Raw filter and go back and re-edit it. So it's a nice non-destructive workflow. You don't have to commit too early. So that's great, but I may need to want to apply some more work to my picture, and for that I may want to apply an adjustment layer, maybe something like a curves layer, and I'm just going to use something from CS6, that's the content aware version of curves, and use the auto button. So it's going to look at the texture and the lighting and give me an automatic curves adjustment for this picture based upon its content. I've just noticed that this area over here is quite bright, and ideally I don't want that as part of the picture, because as soon as I see that, my eye goes to this area and it's a bit annoying. What I'm going to do is, well, there's two things I could do. One is I could actually create something called a lock-off layer. I could use the Shift, Alt, Command, E key, and merge visible upwards, and then I can work on this layer as a background layer. But the problem with doing that is that I increase the file size because it's now a blend of the two layers before it, but also it stops my non-destructive editing. If I make adjustments to this layer and keep adding more layers on, then make it a lock-off layer, which people tend to do, I can never get back to my raw file, never get back to my curves edit, because I've got to go through that layer. So I'm having to throw away time and throw away work to actually carry on my process, which is really frustrating for most photographers and designers when it comes down to Photoshop workflows. So let's delete that layer, and let's convert these two layers to a smart object by selecting them both, and then choose the flyout menu, convert to smart object, and wrap these up in a smart object. I can now go and apply my camera raw filter to this layer. Filter, camera raw filter. Now I can use my clone heal tool. Now, clone heal tool has got a special switch, and also in Lightroom has the same switch, and that's the visualize spots. I can turn this on and it will invert the picture and show me just the mask, and I can turn up and turn down the tolerance. What I can also do is I can clone out with this mask turned on. This is great if you've got any things like dust spots or any annoyances and brightness. You'll see it straight away here without having to fumble around the picture to find it. So it's a great way to work on your pictures, to get rid of any annoyances or anything that's going to distract the viewer from enjoying the picture. Turn that off again to check my result and press OK. Now I update the camera raw smart filter. I now have made that change, and I can keep wrapping up and moving forward and wrapping these smart objects and my layers at any point in time to give me a complete non-destructive workflow. Now, there may be at some point you have to rasterize the layers because some of the filters aren't enabled for smart objects depending on what you're trying to do, but that is much later in the cycle than it used to be. So for example, at this point I can go back to my raw engine by double clicking on the layer. It tells me now that the contents will be saved when I close it. So I open that up, and you can see now it opens a second window and it goes to the original curves layer. Then I can double click on the raw file itself and I can take it back, or in this case it was a JPEG, so it will take me back to the JPEG file, which I can work on if I want to work on that as well. Or if I want to keep it wrapped up, I can close it and I can just work at this level on this camera raw object, which is fantastic. So that's a really great workflow item when it comes to Photoshop and non-destructive editing using the smart filters. Content Aware Patch took a little bit of an enhancement inside Photoshop CC. We've rebuilt the engine for how that logic is applied to the patch, so you should get a much cleaner patch. I just want to show you how to open this as a smart object as well. So I'm going to use smart objects for most of these demos today. If I click on this little hyperlink over here, you can then turn on smart objects in Photoshop here, or if you hold the shift key down, this button will turn to open object. If I do that, you'll see exactly the same feature on my layer and you'll see the smart object icon. I'm just going to replace this content. Now I'm going to pick up the patch tool and move it into content aware mode. Okay, and you can see I could just basically patch this out. Now most photographers at this point will duplicate the layer and work on that new layer because they want to preserve the details of the background layer, but it's duplicated the file size. It also doesn't help me in time when I want to go back to this file and look at what I changed. I have to flick between the two layers and see what I altered, and that's kind of annoying. So let's just go back and get rid of that layer. I'm just going to create an empty layer, and in this empty layer I'm going to use it to carry pixels. So I've got sample all layers turned on and my adaptation is set to medium. I'm going to come back to adaptation in a few minutes, and I'm just going to draw an area around the bag and replace this section with another part of the scene. The new pixels that are being created are now on that transparent layer. You can see the contents have been applied into the patch, and now I can change the adaptation level while that patch is still active to go and resample and recreate content based upon the area that I want to fix. And I can say very strict. Very strict is just outside the selected area, where medium is a larger feather outside the selected area, and very loose is a much bigger selection. So it's definitely worthwhile trying different variations depending on which one's going to fit into the scene that you like the look of the best and which has the best match. So if I just get rid of that selected area, I can, and you can see it fits pretty well. If I just turn on the background layer, you can see this layer there now. Now, if I save this as a PSD file, it will save the empty layer and the pixels, and at any point in time, I can just go back and I can see exactly what I've changed. I can press the E key if I don't like it, make that a bigger brush, and I can just get rid of this quite quickly, and I'm back to where I started. So you can see there the advantages of using the empty layer and the patch tool. Now, this technique is also available on other tools as well, and it's definitely worthwhile having an experiment around that. One feature that has been a while in R&D is the feature that was shown at Max a few years ago, and it was entitled deblur. Now, this filter isn't a deblur filter. It's not going to fix my blurry pictures and make them sharp again. However, what it will do is look at the picture and look for focus points and any movement that you have inside that picture. When this picture was taken, the camera had focus on the flowers, but unfortunately, when the shutter was opened and the exposure was taken, the length of exposure was far too long for the focal length of the lens, and it caused this blurry movement. And you can see here, if I zoom in, you can see the blur trace or the distance here. If I just move my mouse down, you can see there's motion there and distance between the sharp edge and the blur edge. But I can use this also on a smart filter, so just convert that for smart filters quickly, and then go into the filter. Now, the filter is available on the sharpen menu, and it's called shape reduction. It will automatically go and look for areas of the picture and try and sharpen it. And you can see there, it's done a pretty good job at removing that blur trace. Now, it creates you a blur trace. This here is the movement and the distance it moved, or the camera moved. Now, it may be that when you did this, the camera just didn't move in an arc. So there's not just one point I need to fix. It may have moved left to right and also in an arc. So you can also create multiple points to fix, and it will go and perform manipulation on that area, and it will reassemble a picture based upon multiple points. It's definitely worthwhile playing with this filter and playing with the smoothing and artifact suppression. I wouldn't touch the blur trace boundary because that will invoke some artifacts possibly. The benefit of the mask, of course, is that if I do have any artifacts, I can very quickly just move to my brush tool and reset my foreground and background colours and paint with black. Let's just choose a different brush, and I can paint out the adjustment and just focus the area on the bit of the picture that needs to be sharp. So there's different ways of using the tool, and that's a nice way of blending parts of the image that want to be sharp and parts that don't want to be sharp. In Photoshop CS6, we made enhancements to, first of all, the Liquify tool. We put Liquify on the graphics processor, which means now it's ultra fast. So let's just bring this picture in so you can see what I mean. Now notice I'm bringing it in as a smart object, so you can see there the little smart object icon, and I'm just going to go to my Liquify filter. Nice and fast, it's really snappy the way that picture comes up. And also I have my Liquify filter that really works, and it's nice and smooth against that picture. And in CS6 I can press OK, but I've committed those changes. I can never go back and re-edit the Liquify filter, so I've got to keep going backwards and forwards, removing it and reapplying it. But now in CC, Liquify is a complete non-destructive edit, and I can just open my Liquify layer, and I can go in and I can just redo the Liquify, or I can restore it back to where it was, or just keep editing it with a different idea in mind and press OK. So I've got a continuous non-destructive editing process through Liquify. We also introduced in CS6 some new filters on the blur gallery. We introduced the field blur, the iris blur, and the tilt shift blur. These filters were also non-destructive, which means that again, you apply them once and you can't change them. But in CC, you can now change the these filters once you've applied them. So these are also on the graphics processor, which means they're ultra fast, and I can use my In Context on Canvas widget to move the effects around and get exactly the effects I'm looking for by altering the shape of the blur filter, maybe altering the feathering points, or using the Alt key to move individual feathering points around to get exactly the same, to get exactly the look I want. And then press commit, and it will then stack up that filter inside the layers of Photoshop, and you can see them there. So there's my blur gallery and my liquify, and at any point in time I can go back to either one and change it. That also applies to the iris blur and to the tilt shift blur as well. So there's some really great non-destructive items there, and you can see how smart objects are really starting to develop to really encompass that non-destructive workflow editing process inside Photoshop. One of my favourite features inside Photoshop CC is something new that came out in November, and that's the colour range enhancements. So for this picture here, I want to be able to add something called micro contrast. I want to be able to add black into all the trees. If I zoom into the picture, you can see that there are a lot of trees on here, and it would take me a long time to go and paint black into all of those trees. So let's just go and do that now very quickly using this new enhance tool. So I go to my select color range, and I'm just going to turn on, I'm just going to go to my shadows now. So this enhancement applies to highlights, midtones and shadows, and now I can control which shadows are imported and which highlights and midtones are selected if I need to. And previously in CS6 and before, they were all hardwired. So I can now go and select the shadows by my eye or by much more precision. And you can now also have the range and fuzziness. The fuzziness is a feather and the range is the absolute value. So if I go and change my selection preview to be a quick mask, I'm just going to invert that and show the selection over here. I can just pull in the range. You can see that the mask is building up, and I can see that my areas in the picture and the mask are starting to build up as well. And I'm going to pull in some feathering. So I'm going to pick up the other shadow details based upon the feather of the 52 range of that whole tonal range. So bring in the fuzziness, and you can see there it brings not only the trees on the mountain but also trees over here in the sea as well. I'm going to invert that back and turn the invert off, so create me the mask just for those areas, and press OK. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to increase the black by choosing adjustment layer selective color. That will create in the mask obviously, and I can then go into my blacks area and push black into that value. And you can see there I'm now creating some great shadow detail in that shadow area. Now, one of the last things that I spoke about was, one of the things that we spoke about initially was going through the Behance product. Adobe bought Behance back in 2012, in December 2012, and then in February 2013 included that as part of Creative Cloud. Now, Behance is free, so you don't have to be a Creative Cloud member to have a Behance account. However, what you do get out of the Behance Creative Cloud Edition is you get Prosite. And the Prosite is basically a very professional looking website that's driven by the content on your Behance site. Behance is a great way to showcase your work, be inspired by others, and actually perform some collaboration with others that will allow you to improve your photography by working with your peers and people that you trust within your photographic circle. Now, at the current time, there's actually only one integration inside Photoshop for Behance, and that's through something called Work in Progress. Behance has got two modes. It's got the project mode, which is a final project, but it also has the work in progress. And the work in progress is a way that you can collaborate and communicate with your peers. And this is incorporated into Photoshop at the bottom of each window with the little arrow down here. If I push this little arrow, it will connect to the Behance web service and start preparing my image for a work in progress collaboration. It's going to create me an sRGB version, and it's going to create me a small thumbnail version, but also a version to put on the site itself. Now I can create either new work or revisions of work as well. Don't forget it's work in progress, so I may want to add different variations to my piece of work. I can give this a name, but I can also put search engine tags in there as well. So I can say Norway, because that's where these were taken, and I can also put fjord, I can also start the conversation by saying, please provide feedback on this image. Now the visibility is, there's twofold. One is to everyone, the other is my feedback circle. This is my private members that I can invite into my own group, and they will get notification of when this publication goes live, so then they can actually work on that in a close-knit environment and then improve my photography and then push my final projects out. If I press continue, it will then go and publish that to Behance and enable me then to go and push it out on social networks. So this is a great way to raise your profile as a photographer. Now let's just go to my Creative Cloud application. The Creative Cloud application is something that's with every Creative Cloud installation, and this really is the centerpiece of your creativity. The Home tab is a little bit like Facebook and Twitter. It shows you a feed of what's going on inside your creative world. So it's showing me that people that follow me, it's showing me if they like the piece of work I'm doing. It also tells me if I've installed any software or who's started to follow me from a social point of view. In the Behance tab, you can see your own profile, and you can also view your own work and view your own profile. You can also see activity from your followers and from people you're following, so you can get inspired. If you see something you quite like, let's have a look down here and see if there's something interesting. This is pretty cool, this Badlands. So I can just click on this and it will open that up into a browser and take me straight onto that piece of work. And you can see here that this is a project. It's got some details about the project, who it is, and if I like the end result, which is pretty cool, I can then either appreciate this piece of work, I can add it to a collection, and the collection is things I'm following to get inspired, and I can share that with other people as well. I can say following artwork, and I can also follow that person if I want to follow that person as well. So I've got lots of opportunity there to be inspired, but also get other people inspired at the same time. If we just go back to my Creative Cloud application, you can also look at your own work. You've got final projects in there as well, which are your final pieces of work, and you can also discover other pieces as well. This gives you content from things that are favorited or ranking high within the Behance network. And under my work, you've got the projects tab and the work in progress tab. And if we go into work in progress, you see here, there's the picture of the Norway fjords. I used the same picture yesterday in our Create Now tour, and you see that before down here. Now I just want to go down to an older version. That's something I worked with Iona on a while ago, and if we look at this, you can see that I asked her if she would help me review this piece of work, and you can see I've got multiple revisions, so I'm just going to go to revision 1, and I'm asking for some feedback on this version. What happened was I made a change very quickly, and then I asked Iona to have a look at that version and see what she thought, and she thought she looked great, which was giving me some good feedback. And if I go to the third version, which was black and white, I can see what she thought of that. And the fourth version, I got rid of the lady because it confused her in the first instance, and then she thought it was me. So you can see there that you can use this for collaboration. We talked about Prosite. So let's look at my work. Now you can see here, I've got a whole load of content in my project. At any point in time, I can go into a project and I can edit it and amend it if I need to amend it. But what I want to do is publish one of these projects to my Prosite. So my Prosite is on my own URL, and you can see there it's got pretty good content. And if I go into one of these, you can see that it just shows me pictures that I took with some narrative, and it shows me all those pictures that I took there, and I can appreciate that if I'm a different user. And you can also see I've got other galleries in here as well. These are other projects that exist in my Behance account. You can see that the Things in the Garden project is actually a project under my main project site. It's just over here. So my content exists inside Behance. Let's go and publish something that I'm going to create from Lightroom now. So I'm going to create a brand new project. Show you how fast this is. So I open Lightroom and I'm going to find some work. So here's a piece of content that I quite like, and I want to publish these two to a final piece of work, or a final project. So I'm going to go to select these in Lightroom and then File, Export out of Lightroom. I'm going to export them to the Creative Cloud. So go to my Creative Cloud folder, Behance Projects, and create a new folder and call it, I'll call it Behance New Project. Press Create and choose. Okay, and then I've set up my my resize of my file and the formats, and I can export this straight from Lightroom. This will now go to my Creative Cloud folder. Now the Creative Cloud will start to synchronize, as you're seeing here. This is synchronizing the exports up to my Creative Cloud. Let's go and have a look and see what's happening over there. Go to my Files tab in my Creative Cloud application and open the folder. You can see there that they are there on my local machine, and I want to go to my browser to find my Creative Cloud version. So I'm going to log on to creative.adobe.com and log in with my username and password. And if I go into my Behance projects, you can see Behance New Projects, and you can see that content is just available for me. If I now go into my Behance and go and create a new project, I can just turn that off for a second and then give it a name. I'm going to say New Project. Press Save. Now the content is going to be from my Creative Cloud. So I'll go to my Creative Cloud tab, and it opens up the Creative Cloud connection for me and takes me straight through to my Behance folder here, and go to my Behance New Projects, and you can see there that the files that you just saw just now are there as well. So if I select these and press Done, it will now bring it into the Behance project and start creating me a project from it, at which point I can reorder, I can note it for sale, or I can get rid of it if I want to get rid of it, or I can go in and put some text, or I can embed other content. I could embed video, or I can put in other pictures, or whatever I need to do. Once that's done, I can then press Continue and go to the next stage, which is a front cover. I can then pick up the front cover from the Creative Cloud ideas that I had just now, which is this one. And once I've done that and selected and cropped it the way it needs to be to show that work off the best, I can press Continue. And then I can put in the creative fields. This is going to be digital imaging, and it's going to be the work, so it may be recognizing who took the picture or whatever it needs to be. I can say photo, and the description is pictures at a local photo shoot. I can also make that visible to either the public or to my feedback circle, which I can define with inside Behance. I can also push this straight to Prosite as well, and I can link this to work in progress, so I can show behind the scenes or show ideas of how I got to this stage of the project. And when I finish, I can then publish that, or I can just save the changes into my local Behance account. Now let's just go in there and actually just publish that very quickly. And if I go into Behance, my main Behance site now, that's a new published site, so I can just go skip this and just go into me, and you can see there that I have a new piece of work. Now to make this part of my Prosite, let's just go over and see Prosite and go see the main gallery, and you can see I've got quite a few projects in there, and I want to add the next one over here. So go to my Behance account, go to Prosite, and then edit my profile. It takes 2 minutes to create a Prosite. It's template based initially, but you can change that if you want to do. You have your layouts over here, which tells you it enables you to define the new template. You've got your projects over here, which gives you opportunity to put new projects in. Now, the content within this will be the context of Behance. So you can see in here, I have the new project that I just created, and I can very quickly drag this to my project on my Prosite that currently exists, and it will add that in, and you can see that at the bottom of the screen, that new project coming up inside my Prosite account. I can go and change the design and keep my website fresh very quickly by just changing the text. And if I run over here, you can see the areas that this setting will affect. You can also manage your HTML and CSS at this point as well. So to publish the page, you just click on Update Live Site, and then that will save that and publish that out to the live Prosite, and you can see it's doing that now. Once that's finished, I can just go to my main site, and you can see there that that content has now been refreshed. I now have my live site running, and you can see there that the text has come through, and so have the pictures. So you can see how easy it is to go and create content from Behance into Prosite. It alleviates me having to have content in multiple places on the web. So here are some takeaways. You can read my blog. I have an active blog on imaging, so anything to do with Lightroom and Photoshop, and also photography, in-camera techniques, other photographers and this type of thing for inspiration and influence. And you can find that at blogs.adobe.com. I'm on Twitter as well. That's the best way to get hold of me, at Richard Curtis. And don't forget, we've also got Adobe TV. And Adobe TV's got a wealth of information and videos and all sorts of content for you to improve your photography. But also, I want to just re-emphasize the photography bundle. Don't forget, this is still available. You do need CS3. The Black Friday promotion is now finished, so you do need CS3. And you can join for under £10 a month, including VAT. And you get Lightroom 5, you get Photoshop CC, you also get Behance, Prosite, and you get 20 gigabytes of storage. So thanks very much. It's been great talking to you, and look forward to seeing you very soon.